All right, welcome everybody to week one of the Transfer Portal Gambling Podcast. This episode is sponsored by our friends at Home Field Apparel. Home Field is a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis, and they're committed to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They've got a growing collection of over 150 colleges to choose from, with more being added every week, including your favorite teams. Also, if you're new to the Home Field brand, if you're a first-time customer, you can use our promo code PORTAL to get 15% off your first order, and that link is in the description or of this podcast or YouTube, wherever you're listening. So get a great deal and use the code PORTAL, PORTAL, for 15% off. Now, this week on our week one gambling podcast, I got Matt and Mike joining me. Why don't you introduce yourselves, guys? Matt, you go first.
I'm Matt. I'm a USC fan. You guys have seen me a lot last year. If you watch any of the podcasts last year, we got a new cast this year, but we're excited to make some money still. So, Mike.
So I'm Mike May. I'm a friend of the Transfer Portal College Football. Super stoked to be a guest on the show. I'm a Penn State grad, and I will be incredibly biased with any sort of Penn State picks that are brought up. So I won't include them on mine. I want to make you guys some money.
And I'm George. I write for the Transfer Portal, and I'm a big Texas fan. So I'll let you guys call me out on my biases as they appear here. So as always, follow us on our Twitter, TPortalCFB, and our website, thetransferportalcfb.com. Find all of our content, all of our picks, and our YouTube as well. So going over the format, what we're going to be doing for the gambling show. Talk a little bit about what to expect the week ahead, week one, and every week that we do this. Some changes, some big games to look at, maybe some updates throughout the season. We might talk Heisman's futures, anything like that, and then we're going to go over a pick individually for over, unders, our favorites, which are giving points, our underdogs, which are getting points, a true upset, so anything 2.5 points or over, and then our lock of the week, and finally leave you with a parlay or a teaser, at least 3 legs to send you on your way for the weekend. So getting us started, everyone's excited for week one. A lot of games on the slate, not a lot of really that close games. There's 2 big games that we'll cover for this week, but really one of the more impactful changes, I would say, to the gambling atmosphere is our new rule change. So the new rule change is no clock stoppage on first downs. They used to stop the clock and wait for the offense and everyone to get set, and then they would start running again. I think that's going to have a big impact. What do you guys think? I'll start with you, Mike. What do you think about the new clock change and how it's going to impact probably overs and unders, truthfully?
It's as far as my opinion on it from the game standpoint, I hate it. It changes how we've thought about things for my memory of college football anyway. But as far as overs and unders, Vegas isn't stupid, so I think that they're trying to tease us on a couple of these lines that are out this week. I think it's going to impact it a little bit, but not as much as an inexperienced gambler would think. So we'll look at some lines like the Iowa State, the one that everybody looks at. It might move from 34 points to 32 points or something. Like I wouldn't dive first just because of a rule change on those. I would stick steady, but I think it's absolutely going to impact some of the games, especially with some of the higher scoring teams. You might not see them as many 90-point games in the shootouts like you saw with Tennessee and Alabama last year. But I don't think it's going to impact over-unders on a massive scale.
Yeah, it might, if anything, some of the teams that are traditionally more passing forward, it might actually speed those games up a little bit when we're used to seeing them get a first down and then, kind of walk up to the ball and figure out what they're doing and already have the next play called. So
Recording.
But yeah, so I do think it's going to be a big change. It's going to be a little bit tough to get used to, at least watching the game. But I think overall it's not going to be too crazy. But Matt, I'll turn it over to you. We got 2 big games this week. We might cover them a little bit as we go through our picks, but the only 2 real ranked games, and one of them is more of a rivalry than a ranked game, is North Carolina taking on South Carolina. and then LSU at Florida State, the ranked game that's on Sunday night. Which one of those two are you looking forward to, and what are you looking out for?
I'm more excited about the Florida State game just because I've always been a fan of the ACC, and I think they're the bigger threats to take down the ACC than UNC is. So I'm excited to see what Florida State can do. And then obviously Florida State dominated the kind of offseason cycle this year with the additions they're getting. So I'm excited to see what they can do against real competition.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy game to have week one. I'm just super excited to get four awesome quarterbacks on week one. I'm really excited to see how they do. And I know people might be cringing at Spencer Rattler being an awesome quarterback, but I do think he's going to be exciting if anything. But we'll talk about them in a little bit. But other stuff around college football and what's going to impact some of these teams. A couple new quarterbacks at big teams. I know the first week might not be a true test of what they need to do and how they need to perform to get their team back to where they're supposed to be. But some top 25 teams with big quarterback changes. Mike, who are you looking forward to taking a look at that's not named Drew Lohr with a new quarterback situation?
Yeah, I think it's Kyle McCord. So I think there's a nice romantic story about him and Harrison Jr.'s high school stint together, St. Joe's Prep by Philly. But I think that means something. I think that when we're in the off season, they're the ones that are teaming up together, driving to each other's houses, running routes and practicing, the 8-yard digs and stuff like that. So obviously I would go with Drew Lohr, but I think Kyle McCord's the real answer. I don't think I'll jump back to Drew Lohr quick on it. I don't think you're going to see a lot from him in week one. West Virginia's 3-man front, I think they're going to hand the ball off a lot in a lot of short throws, but I think it'll be fun to see Kyle McCord spread the ball out to Harrison Jr., Fleming, those guys.
Yeah, I think Ohio State's gonna be awesome. I actually have a dark horse, Heisman for Kyle McCord solely because of the weapons around him. I think all he's got to do is just, take the old Alabama playbook of just, manage the game, don't make too many mistakes, and just hit open guys. Because I can't imagine those guys aren't getting it open. But what about you, Matt? What are you who are you most looking forward to for some big changes to move the needle a little bit?
For me, it's Joe Milton. Because for me, this Tennessee team is kind of like their last hurrah. They got a lot of seniors, a lot of old guys on that team. That this is kind of their last hurrah for like a real contention window before they kind of go through a little bit of a rebuilding phase. So if he can keep that offense clicking like the way it was last year, they're a dark horse contender as well.
I know he's got a cannon for an arm, but do you think there's a drop off? Because Hendon Hooker was, he had so many years of experience. I know he bounced around for Virginia Tech and then over at Tennessee, but I feel like there's got to be a drop off a little bit with Joe Milton. I don't think he's got the reps, and I've seen him overthrow way too many people to be comfortable with picking Tennessee, in a meaningful or close contest. But what do you think?
In general, I agree, but that's kind of what I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see if maybe like a full off season as the guy getting the reps that maybe that gets him where he needs to be, but we'll see.
Yeah, you just want to see him throw 90 yards. Is you could just say that
90 yards from his knees, and I think through the field goal post. I think something like that.
All right. Before we get into our specific picks, since we're at the beginning of the season, I know week 0 already happened, but give me some overview of any futures you got your eye on. It could be Heisman, it could be wins, losses, it could be someone to make the playoffs. Give me like one or two futures that you guys are taking a look at. I'll start with you, Mike.
The one that I'm feeling awful about that I put money on was the USC Future National Championship, because I love the value. I think I got it at plus 2,000. But after seeing that defense, I'm hoping that the slander that they've been taking on social media from everybody will make them wake up. But tough to love that pick. I will say the now that Kyle McCord beat out Devin Brown, I like that. I like that Heisman pick. I think that Jalen Milroe is gonna start for Alabama. I don't hate that pick either, because he's dual threat. He's probably gonna put up some gaudy numbers, I would think, for the Crimson Tide. Those would be my two.
Yeah, I'm gonna I'm going to default to a little bit of a homer pick. I definitely picked Texas to win the national championship to sprinkle a little bit of money on. I just don't think the Big 12 is all that competitive. I think Oklahoma is overrated. And then from there, it's just, can you scheme and win a game or two? I just think it's cheating to pick Georgia. I think they're, out of control good. In terms of Heisman, yeah, I think cat's out of the bag with my dark horse with Kyle McCord. But the other one I love, which again, I promised that I had this preseason, but Sam Hartman is absolutely my guy. I think Sam Hartman's fantastic, and seeing him in an offense with a few more weapons. I know A.T. Perry was good with at Wake Forest, but seeing him with some more options over at Notre Dame, I think he's gonna put up some insane numbers this year, and I think they have a pretty good chance. I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State, but pretty good chance to win every other game, and he might be in New York at the end of the year. What do you got, Matt?
I got a couple conference winners. I got South Alabama to win the Sun Belt, which I'll talk about a bit more later because I really like that team and think that they have a good chance to win it. And then Buffalo to win the MAC, which I feel even better about now. If I think Rourke should be fine. They said he should be good to play for the next game, but if he's injured at all and that stutters that season, I really think they have a good chance to win that division, which gives them an even better chance to win the conference. For Heisman winners, it's a little chalky. I really think Caleb's going to win it again. I wouldn't place a bet on it because it's plus 500 for a Heisman. But I think if the person with the best chance to dethrone him simply because of schedule and then obviously the talent around him is Penix. Penix at that retrieving core is elite. They have so much around him, and then he obviously has the advantage of having a head-to-head showdown with Caleb Williams in late November. So if UW's say like 10-1 or 11-1 with a win over USC, that might lean him in the voters' favor.
Yeah, if he brings them to the playoff, I think he's in New York. That's just I think it's that simple for him. I think he's definitely going to put up numbers. Another one I forgot, Cade Klubnik out of Clemson. I've been super high on this kid since he was I think he was like a 3-time high school state champion in Texas at like I forget what high school, like Westlake or something. But he's out of control, and just watching him. The quarterback battle that Dabo tried to sell us on with DJ Uiagalelei and him and Cade Klubnik trying to show us that Cade wasn't ready, and then he comes in and just drives him down the field and puts up 7 points instantly when DJ couldn't move the ball. I cannot wait to see that kid with a full offseason and all the talent that Clemson has, and they really only have like minimal hurdles. Florida State probably being the only real one. In order to really make moves and potentially get to the playoffs. So, but yeah, so let's get into some of our picks. Like I said, the format, we're going to do basically one pick for each category just because we want to keep this into a little bit of an easier way to track this. We're going to be putting out our spreadsheet of our picks and our graphics, and we're going to keep an updated spreadsheet of our records moving forward. So it's might turn into a little bit of a competition down the stretch. But in order to kick this thing off, we'll start with the overs. Matt, I'll start with you. Give us your over, maybe a reason why or two, and let us pick it apart. What you got?
So with mine with Ohio State, Indiana, you guys have always obviously hyped Kyle McCord up for the first 10 minutes of this podcast. So we like what he can do. And this is a game where Ohio State put up 59 against Indiana last year by themselves. So that's what the number is at, 59. Obviously, they might take a step back losing CJ Stroud, but surrounding CJ Stroud is still all the talent in the world at receiver and running back. So this is an offense that I think could get into the 50s by themselves. And if Indiana just gives us a little bit of help against an Ohio State defense that was a little leaky last year, if they could just give us a little bit of help there, I think 59 is well within reach.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that mostly because I just think Ohio State's probably going to cover that by themselves. So we'll see. What you got, Mike?
For Matt's pick, the only thing that I would caution on that there's like one good player on Indiana, and he's a defensive lineman, and Ohio State's only question is the offensive line. So there could be some unfortunate turnover. I can't pick apart that pick though. Ryan Day schemes them open so well, those wide receivers, and Kyle McCord is going to pick apart Donnie Allen. I got this is going to cause some stir, but I got some Iowa versus Utah State over 43. So a couple of reasons behind this. Utah State stinks. Iowa has two fantastic tight ends, and it sounds like Cade McNamara is going to play while limited. So I'm feeling really good about their passing game. I think they're going to run the ball. I think they're going to give up a couple points in garbage time. And I think that with the it's my test for that Brian Ferentz bonus of over 25 points or whatever it is. So if they can get to 30 or so, I could see Utah State having a couple scores.
Yeah, I think I wrote about this earlier in the year as like something to put in the gambling tickler file. I love every garbage time Iowa over, because I do not think they're going to pull starters ever. I think they're just going to try and run it up because Brian Ferentz needs to get points desperately to keep his job. So I love this. The only reason I didn't actually choose this was I think Iowa's defense is actually decent, and I don't really think Utah State's putting over 10 points up. And if they are held to 10 points, 33 points doesn't seem very high for a team that's actively trying to run up the score, but it's Iowa. And I think they averaged like in the 21 points a game last season, which is incredibly low. So I do like that. I do like that pick though. I'll probably tail that pick as well. But my pick is Texas and Rice over 59. Obviously, this is a little bit of a homer pick, but I think Texas has a lot to prove. And Quinn Ewers coming back with the majority of his weapons, Xavier Worthy, Jatavian Sanders on tight end. I think he's going to be able to move the ball downfield pretty significantly. And I think Texas going into Alabama in week 2 really, really, really needs to like empty out the bag and get all of the kinks ironed out. And I think they're going to try and do that week 1. And they're going to put as many points up as they can, get the confidence as high as possible, because this is kind of it for Texas, the last year in the Big 12, and you can't put up lay an egg against Alabama. So I think this is like the ultimate tune up for them.
I like both of those picks. The only reason I won't be taking Iowa is because gambling is illegal in some states. It's illegal in all states to bet on Iowa over. So only reason I won't be taking that one.
Yeah, it almost feels dirty when you see like an Iowa over, and it's like when last season they were getting down to like the mid 30s. It was like 36.5, and I still was taking unders and hitting most of the time. So but yeah, speaking of unders and where we're at with that, Matt, I'll start with you this time, but who do you got for your under pick for this week?
For me, it's the Miami Bowl. Miami, Florida versus Miami, Ohio. I think both these teams have more in common than just their names. They both came off fairly disappointing 2022s, and they're both teams. Their defense was significantly better than their offense. For Miami, Florida, they had Tyler Van Dyke there, and we hope he makes a recovery to what he showed at the later half of 2021. But if he comes back to what he showed in 2022, that offense is going to struggle again. And then their big question mark was wide receiver, which they made next to zero significant additions to that wide receiver room. So I think they're going to have just as much issue there as they did last year. And then Miami, Ohio gets Brett Gabbert back from injury, who only played 4 or 5 games last year, but then they lose their leading receiver, Matt Kippenheimer. So I think that offense is still going to struggle this year. So I have under 45.5 there.
Yeah, no, I like that pick. I actually like that game. I think that's going to be one of the more exciting games for this first slate. But yeah, I think I think that's a pretty solid pick. For mine, I have Buffalo and Wisconsin under 54. I actually love Wisconsin this season. I have Wisconsin going to the Big Ten championship game. I'm a huge believer in Luke Fickell, but I think it takes him a little bit longer for him to have the offense completely humming. And I think he's going to have the defense playing well enough to hold Buffalo down probably less than 10 points. So I have the score being, somewhere like 42-10 or something like that, and them kind of squeaking in with the under.
Yeah, I like those both. So I think start with Matt's pick, the Miami versus Miami, that they're going to be juiced for it too. If you heard some of the smack talk going back and forth about who's the real Miami, so that's going to lead to sacks. That's going to lead to overthrows on offense, and that I think there's not going to be much scoring early in that game. So I like that pick. I don't know much about Buffalo, so Matt, I heard that they're your Mac pick. I do like Wisconsin's defense. I do like Wisconsin's run game, so it makes sense for the under there. I got Baylor versus Texas State under 61. I was surprised to see the number this high. I hope it's not a trick by Vegas, but Dave Aranda's a old school guy. Defense, got a dual threat quarterback who's going to keep that clock running. I just don't think there's enough time. I know Texas State lost those two defensive ends to UCLA or wherever they went last year, so their defense is even more open. But I just don't see it getting above 61.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked to see that number that high too. I think that's a really good pick. I just don't see Baylor putting up more than 40 something points, and I definitely don't see Texas State putting up more than 20. So I think 61 is a pretty high bar for them to clear.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that one could be 50s. As far as Buffalo goes, I actually really like their defense for max standards. It's a pretty good defense. I think they have the second or third best defense in the max, so I like the under as a pick there as well.
God, I'm tailing that.
Moving over to favorites, I'll start with my favorite. I have Kentucky. I know this is a pretty big line, and especially early in the season, it's a little bit hard knowing what you have to jump on a line. But Kentucky's minus 26.5 versus Ball State, and I don't necessarily love Kentucky as much as I don't really think Ball State is going to be that good. I think their win total is like 3 to 4 wins for what Vegas has them at. And I think Devin Leary's transferring into Kentucky. I don't know if the offense is going to be 100% humming, but I think it's just going to be, them just having some missed tackles and big plays and, getting a couple maybe cheap scores here and there and being able to put up 35 points in the first half or like 28 points in the first half or something, and then kind of just walk the rest of the way in.
I agree. That Ball State, I don't think that Ball State team is very good. It's might be bottom 10 in the country. It's a bad team.
Yeah, sometimes it's not necessarily picking like the best team; it's picking against the bad teams. So that was kind of my mindset here. But Matt, what do you have for your favorite?
For me, I went with one of the few lines that's like within single digits, an ACC matchup, Louisville versus Georgia Tech. I got Louisville at minus 7.5. I think the Jeff Brom era is going to lead this Louisville team to being a better team. Their offense was just so stagnant, even with electric quarterbacks like Malik Cunningham and Lamar Jackson. That offense was still somehow really stagnant last year, and for the last better part of a decade. I think Jeff Brom's going to have that team looking better. And then he brings in an old Brom quarterback with Jack Plummer from Cal. So he has familiarity with the system. And even if that offense isn't humming, he turns around, hands it to Jordan, all ACC back against a defense that was in the bottom 10 in the country. And then my favorite part about this is Georgia Tech's quarterback this year is Haynes King, who was not great. There's better throwers of the football in the country. So that's kind of like you said, picking against the bad teams.
Yeah, Haynes King's a decent runner, but there's a reason he's not at Texas A&M anymore. So, what do you think, Mike?
I got Purdue -4. They're at home against Fresno State. I think it's a lot of the new coach smell. Listening to the interviews that they had at Big Ten Media Days, they're a confident bunch, and that backup quarterback with Aiden O'Connell's the name is escaping me of the kid, but with Aiden O'Connell's injury history, they had gotten time. And they have weapons. They had the fifth best, I think, recruiting class 2 years ago in the Big Ten, which is surprising for a Purdue squad. And not many people exited from the transfer portal standpoint when the new coach came in. So they're going to be better on defense. I don't think they're going to give up a ton of points to a team coming from the West Coast. I like Purdue at the home stand for a new coach with that happy ending.
Yeah, I like Purdue -4. I actually did also like the under this game with Aiden O'Connell leaving. He's doing pretty good in preseason too, and then Jake Haener, also huge friend of the podcast or huge friend of the transfer portal. But Jake Haener leaving as well, so two new offensive play callers or signal callers under center. I just think that's not going to be the prettiest game, but being in Lafayette, I guess I see Purdue kind of pulling it off by at least a touchdown.
What is the under in this game? I might have to add that.
I think I might have it in my future ones, but yeah, no, I think it was like 47 maybe.
Yeah,
46.
I like that too.
Yeah, I'll add that to my additional picks at the end. But speaking of underdogs, teams that we think are going to, with the points, cover the spread. I have Akron plus 10 against Temple. Akron's returning their quarterback, and they played everyone pretty tough. I know they're not really the best team. I think their win total was like 3.5 this season, but they played most teams pretty tough down the stretch last season. And I just truthfully don't think there's any reason for Temple to ever be favored by double digits. I think with the new clock continuously running, Temple's probably going to try to just, as soon as they score, try and just lean on them with the run a little bit. So I can't really see this game getting out of hand whatsoever. Not necessarily betting on Akron, but more betting on Temple to not have this be a blowout. So I got Akron plus 10. What do you got, Mike?
I love your pick. So Joe Moorhead at Fordham, Penn State, Mississippi State, and Oregon got better as time went on, as when people learned his system. That's why they played better down the stretch last year. I think them being on year 2 of his system, I wouldn't be surprised if they pull off the upset. But I like that pick. Mine, this is my favorite pick that I have is UMass plus 35 at Auburn. So UMass actually pulled off an upset last week and won. But that's not why I love them. I love them because they have a dual threat quarterback. I'm not buying Auburn. They're young, new coach. They're going to run the ball as well. So I just don't think they're going to score enough to outpace 35 points. So I can see this being a 38-7 game. But I just don't think that they have the firepower to outpace 35 points against UMass with a running quarterback who I think they put up 41 last week. So it's not like they stink. They're probably going to put up they're probably going to put up 10, 14 points.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I just can't see that Auburn offense putting up much more than 40, 42. So if you just need one touchdown out of UMass, I think that's really, really doable.
Yeah, to be honest, the only reason I didn't pick this is because last week them winning and overplaying, some people say overplaying. I think that, I'm a little bit nervous that they kind of got it out of their system and then they're a little bit too hyped up from last week. So I do think it's going to be, pretty close to the 35 number, but I would definitely lean in that direction that they're going to cover, 5 touchdowns. But all right, so that was one of your favorites. You said for me, you thought Akron plus 10 could potentially be a true upset. That was one of my choices going in. But for actual upsets, teams that are 2.5 point dogs or more, who do we got? Who do we got this week for pulling off the actual upset? I'll start with you, Matt.
So for me, I went with South Alabama. The spread's like 6.5. The money line, you get anywhere from like 190 to 210, wherever you're looking. For us, my bookies who we're using generally, they're plus 195 was the line when I last looked. I really like this South Alabama team. They've showed they can play up to Power 5 competition. Tulane's obviously new to that Power 5 competition last year by almost beating UCLA, so they can play up in talent. And I really like they're one of the most experienced teams in the country. They say they have 26 starters. Get with their transfer package, they returned 22 of 26 of their players that are completely playing key snaps this year. So they have a lot of experience at key positions. I really like their secondary with De'Aaron Banks, who's a friend of the podcast, one of the best safeties in the Sun Belt. And then with Tulane, they lose a lot of the key pieces on their offense. Michael Pratt returns, but then they lose Tyjae Spears. They lose their top 2 receivers. So I think it's going to be an adjustment for them to get into the new year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's a really good pick. I think South Alabama just has a lot of talent, and then playing together is just, especially week 1, that's a recipe for an upset. I do like the value too. 195 is pretty good value on that. My pick is South Carolina. It's a little bit of a cheap pick because it's only a 2.5 point spread. I think it's about plus 130, maybe 135 on my bookie. But South Carolina to beat North Carolina, they're at home, so North Carolina is traveling to them. There's a lot of hype around Drake May, potentially being top 5 pick, potentially being a Heisman candidate. I just think he lost a decent amount of talent on the offensive side of the ball, and I think South Carolina early season was hyped up a little bit and kind of sputtered a little bit towards the middle, but Spencer Rattler did actually look a little bit better and a little bit closer to the prospect he was supposed to be towards the end of the season. And I think they're going to, be able to score enough and maybe hold Drake May down enough to be able to pull off this upset. It's only, a field goal upset or line, but I think they're going to be able to pull it off at home. What do you got, Mike?
Yeah, I had South Carolina as well. I think that should be a pick 'em game. That Spencer Rattler came on in at the end of the year. They've been heavily invested in NIL, got a fantastic recruiting class. They got that Nicholas Harbor kid that runs like a 10 flat 100-meter dash, and he's like 6'5", 260. He's huge. I think he's going to be fun to watch. But I'm not going to steal your pick. I'll go value here. I'm just going to change my pick to Akron ML. I'm assuming that's probably plus 500 or something on my bookie.
Around there, yeah. I think it was 470 something.
Okay. Yeah, that's the value pick.
Hey, that's a good pick. That means we both win. So, all right. So yeah, last but not least, or I guess we got one after that with parlays, but last actual pick of this week for what we're doing with our actual statistics, a lock of the week. Who is your favorite lock of the week? Either with spread or over under. I'll start with you, Matt. What's your favorite game that you're picking?
Mike, you're gonna love this. I did this. I didn't know you were a Penn State fan coming in. So my old co-host on this was a Penn State fan as well. So it's like he never even left, really. So I have Penn State minus 20.5. I just think they're way too talented for this West Virginia team. They have pieces at every single level. If Drew Aller is really the prince who was promised, this won't even be close to 21 in my opinion.
Yeah, I think West Virginia's not a good football team. I do love the Penn State pick. I was debating picking it myself. I just didn't want to be a homer, and I definitely can't pump Mike up before this weekend. But I'm actually going to the game, so I'll be at the Penn State game, rooting for Penn State against West Virginia. So go Nittany Lions, and if they cover, that'd be exciting. And probably also just have to bet the over, just because live sports you always want to bet the over. But my pick, lock of the week. I'm going to go a little bit differently than what I originally had thought and wrote down. I'm leaning back and going with Ohio State minus 30 over Indiana. I just think Ohio State's going to explode offensively. I know that's not really a hot take, but I think everybody overhyped what this QB battle was with Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. And I think it was potentially, 1A, 1B situation, but I think everyone's, looking at this like, oh, there's a reason Kyle McCord wasn't named the starter earlier. There must be a problem. I don't think it's a problem. I think they just have too much firepower and don't really know what to do with it. So I think they're just going to be, grinding their teeth waiting for Indiana to step on the field. And Matt, like you said, I think they put up 59 points last year. I do think, and this is, a homer pick for Tommy Eichenberg, but I think the Ohio State defense is significantly better this year. And they've moved Jack Sawyer over to defensive end, which is his natural position. I think they're going to have, a fantastic defensive line, and from there just be able to wreak havoc, in the defensive backfield. So that's my pick. Ohio State minus 30 against Indiana. What do you got, Mike?
I'm picking with Penn State. I said I wasn't going to be a homer, but the West Virginia's defense stinks. I think Penn State's going to hand the ball off to those two sophomore running backs. I don't think Drew Aller is going to have to do too much, but I think he's going to do enough to widen some eyes, like the prince who was promised. And I think this is going to be a party that night, George. I'm jealous you're going.
Hey, we all win. If Penn State covers 20.5 points, then all three of us win. So.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a game where they're kind of really try to ease Drew into the offense and kind of let him get some easy throws in there, get some confidence with the group. I think it should be an easy cruising for Penn State.
Yeah, and having a fantastic offensive line in Nicholas Singleton's a little bit unfair. That's the easiest ease into an offense you can ever really ask for. So I do love that pick. I'll probably tail that as well. But all right, so last. More exciting part of the podcast. We want to talk parlays, teasers, some multiple leg bets here. So give me a 3-leg either parlay or teaser that you're going to be putting in this weekend and why you're putting it in. So I'll start with you, Mike. Who you putting in, and tell me if it's a parlay or a teaser.
So this is a 3-leg parlay. I like to do 3-leg parlay MLs for even money. So I went pretty ACC with this, and it reflects some of the picks that are above, but adds one in. So Louisville money line, Miami, Florida money line, and BC money line. So while the Miami game of Ohio is going to be fun, I don't think that they have the dudes to line up with the U. We already talked about why Louisville's spread pick is a good one. And I believe BC's line was 8. At home, running the ball. It's and they're playing. Oh man, who are they playing? Northern Illinois. I think we're in good shape there. So that gets you even money with 3 money line picks out of the ACC. I like those.
Okay, even money. Okay, not taking too much risk there, Mike. But all right, I'll respect it. I'll respect it. All right, so Matt, what do you got? What's your parlay or teaser of the week?
I went with a little riskier money lines, but I have 3 money lines as well. Mostly ACC as well. I have a UNC, which is fading you guys a little bit. Florida State and then Wazoo all money line. Florida State, I'm surprised they're underdogs in this game, so I like the value there at plus 115. I think they're the better team compared to LSU, so I think they win that one. And then Wazoo is they're bigger favorites. I think they're like a minus 350, but they're just a better team. And then UNC, I for me, what this is I really like Drake May. I think he's really talented. I think this is gonna be a shootout. So that's where this is gonna be a bit iffy, because if Spencer Rattler is what he showed down the last 2 or 3 games of last season, if he keeps on track for that, he's a Heisman candidate. So I think this is gonna be a shootout, and I think UNC is more poised for shootouts than they are slap them out, drag them out brawls.
Yeah, and to be honest, the best thing for Spencer Rattler is to not be a preseason Heisman candidate. Like, it's going to go directly to that kid's head. I'm a fan. I like exciting, polarizing people, I'll call them, in college football. But I think him being a slight underdog in terms of, what people are thinking he's going to be able to do at this level, next level, and what South Carolina is going to do is good for him. But no, Drake May, it is difficult to bet against him, and FSU and Wazoo are good picks. Who's Wazoo playing? I forgot. I didn't have it here in front of me.
Let me play it up again. Colorado State.
Okay.
Bad
yeah, no, that's
team. Bad football team.
Yeah, and plus 350 is great value for that. But all right, my teaser. I'm doing a big boys only teaser. I'm taking 3 big favorites, but I'm taking them with the points. So I'm taking Texas minus 35. Texas playing Rice for the first game of the season. I'm taking Ohio State minus 30. I already took them as my lock. So talked to them a little bit much about them against Indiana, and then Penn State 20.5 against West Virginia at home. I think all 3 of these teams have a lot to prove offensively. Not necessarily that they're being slighted, but they either have a new quarterback or they either have expectations that people are questioning. And like I said, with Texas, it's got to be a big tune-up game. I think all these teams easily put up 45, 50 points, and then it's just a matter of how their defense is playing. So I'm calling this my big boys only parlay. I don't know what it's going to pay out as, but I think it's going to be a pretty decent payout, probably plus 500 or something like that. But I'll I got to do the math on this after the show. But those are my 3 big boys only parlay.
I was told there were going to be no homer picks in this podcast, and both of you.
I said
it's a lock.
When has that ever gone wrong? But in my defense, I said, call me out, man. Call me out if I do a homer pick. I have the Texas's back-o-meter, and it's all the way at Texas might be back. It's in like the yellow and burnt orange, ready to go to red or ready to go to green. So, oh man. But yeah, so those are our picks for our categories that we're doing. I'm going to kind of open up the floor a little bit. I'll start with you, Matt, but any other picks you want to throw out, any other, not necessarily, ones that you're adding to this card, but things you got your eye on, or, something you might be betting this weekend.
What I like is a Boise State plus 14.5. I think this is a really talented offense. Taylor Green's one of the more exciting young quarterbacks in the country. They have a really good offensive line, and they have two really good running backs as well. So I like them to score the ball against a lot of teams, which Washington isn't one of the, they're good defense. They're an okay defense, not one of the better defenses in the country. So I like them to be able to score the ball with anybody. Then Washington, we obviously know all the weapons they are. I talked about Michael Penix a bit earlier, but I don't think they're going to be able to pull away from this Boise State team like that, especially because last year Boise State had the fifth best pass defense in the country, and they didn't lose that many pieces from that defense. It was JL Skinner, which is the biggest loss, but outside of that, a lot of the pieces remain the same. So I like them. I like Boise State to keep this one within 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I like that too. Another pick or two I had my eye on. I didn't end up choosing this, but I do like Virginia and Tennessee to go over 56.5. It seems like a little bit high of a number. I know I kind of gave a little bit of a lukewarm take on Joe Milton a little bit earlier when you were talking about Tennessee, but I mean, I think Tennessee has an explosive offense, and I think Virginia, no slouch either. And I think they're going to be able to put up, probably 2 touchdowns, and just that alone, I think will give Tennessee enough to cover the over. And then something else I had my eye on was Oklahoma and Arkansas State and the under 58.5. This is maybe part of the homer pick. I'm not a believer in Oklahoma. I don't think they're necessarily bad. They're not going to be as bad as they were last year, but I don't know if Brent Venables has fully turned it around yet. I think the first part of that turnaround is going to be their defense. So I think Arkansas State's not really going to score much on them, but I don't think Dylan Gabriel is really all that much of an answer at Oklahoma. I just, the only thing I'm looking out for is they might just have a couple big plays just because, they recruit really well. But I think that's going to be a relatively low scoring game. And Brent Venables is just going to be happy to get out of there with a double-digit win, and it might be a 40-point game total. What about you, Mike?
We already talked the 2.5-point spread games, Florida State and LSU and the Carolina game. I thought those should both be pick'ems. So if you like the underdogs in those, I would take the money lines, but very similar to how we did either in the teasers or the underdog picks. The only other one I really had my eye on was a Friday night matchup, Central Michigan and Michigan State. The line was 14.5. I'm not buying Michigan State this year. They had that mass exodus of transfer portal folks coming in late winter. I think they caught magic in a bottle. That one year they won 11 games, and last year was kind of a more of a show of what they're going to be. And Central Michigan's pretty good and fired up for this game. So I think I like 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, no, I like that too. I might have to tail some of that. But yeah, so those are all our picks. We're going to be putting this out in terms of a sheet for tracking our picks, and you can follow along. Definitely put up your picks, who you got. If you're tailing us, if you're fading us, definitely let us know. We're going to be doing this every single week. Our odds are brought to you every single week by MyBookie, and I got Matt and Mike here for the rest of the season. So this is us for week 1, and thank you for joining. And follow us on our socials: Twitter @TPortalCFB, our website thetransferportalcfb.com, and like and subscribe on YouTube. Have a good night.